How concerned are you about AI being slanderous, if you will?
Well,
or worse?
I mean, AI is a technology. So I don't think the AI or the generative AI is slanderous per se. But if the large language models it's drawing from contain disinformation, anti-Semitism, and hate, then you build biased technologies from the start.
But how much are you worried about? So interestingly, if you look at the large language models that are being created and effectively controlled by the ChatGPT, Microsoft on one end, Google, Anthropic. I'm thinking of one more that is now, I've lost my train. There's a couple. Bard's on Google. But all of those, to be honest with you, I'm not that worried about because they actually have some guardrails that they're putting around these things. To me, the question is all of these other AIs, these other sort of large language models or even smaller language models that may be open source, that may be uncontrollable. Or frankly, what Elon Musk is hoping to do with his AI tool, which is to say he wants it so that you can say, I think you would be able to say, I am a racist. I want you to talk like the way I talk, and this is how I am, because he wants his AI to be completely open to do whatever.
Or I'm homeschooling my kids. Give me a history lesson that tells me the truth about the Holocaust that didn't happen. And I could standardize that and get that all over the world like that. Yeah, so I think that is a real problem. I mean, I've got to be honest, Andrew, the way that Google and Microsoft and the other companies are developing these technology, like you said earlier, Joe, they go gradually and then suddenly so fast. Like, it is hard to say where this lands, but we just released, ADL did a survey of the public, and there is massive concern out there. The public doesn't understand what's in these systems and is worried about what they're going to generate.
Can you speak to the other component part of that interview, which I'm so fascinated by your perspective on, is Elon's comments about George Soros. He said he is not an anti-Semite. In fact, he called himself a pro-Semite. I know you've talked to him over the years. What do you think?
Well, Elon Musk is not anti-Semitic. There's no question about that. I've talked to him many, many times. He has Jewish friends. I mean, I'm not worried about that. But it's unmistakable that he is arguably the most influential man on the planet, controlling what's essentially our public square. And when he repeats conspiracy theories, when he amplifies ideas like George Soros, who's a polarizing figure, who supports policies that I don't agree with, still, when you say he's a supervillain trying to destroy humanity, that feeds the extremists who want to kill supervillains and who think that George Soros embodies this idea of the Jewish conspiracy. Andrew, that's what's so dangerous.
Let me ask you then, is there a way to critique or criticize George Soros without raising the specter of being anti-Semitic?
Watch this. I think that some of the DAs that George Soros has funded or the policies he supports are bad for curbing crime. I think George Soros has funded NGOs pursuing policies on Israel that I strongly disagree with, that I think are creating a more unstable Middle East. I think George Soros' support of groups like the Plowshare Funds got the nuclear deal on Iran dead wrong. I just did it. But that doesn't mean I think he is trying to erode civilization. When you make comments like that, it exacerbates extremists with guns.
When you've talked to Elon Musk about that, then what kind of reaction have you gotten?
Well, I haven't spoken to him word for word about this, but, you know, I tweeted about that I thought it was a mistake. He didn't tell me he was going to tweet about George Soros. I didn't tell him I was going to criticize. And then I think he tweeted something like, stop defaming me. But it isn't defaming someone to point out with their huge platform that they're peddling in conspiracy theories that could be dangerous.
Yeah, my problem with George Soros is I really think he wants a borderless world. And I think he wants a totally egalitarian society, which is weird for someone who's got about $10 billion. It happens a lot with people who have a lot of money. But I did see that there was it a Washington Post piece trying to see whether anti-Semitism was on the rise. And if you just criticize George Soros, that was included in the calculation.
Again, you can criticize George Soros, not be an anti-Semite. You can criticize the state of Israel, not be anti-Semitic. You can criticize Jonathan Greenblatt and not be anti-Semitic. But we've got to acknowledge, like, again, last weekend was the anniversary of the Buffalo Massacre.
The other thing was
in Texas.
The other thing was the swastika here and the SS both.
Yeah, basically,
that pretty much sums up
So our analysts
what
at
we
ABL,
know about that guy.
Yeah, we got our hands on his sort of online diary, the shooter in Allen, Texas.
Why do you think Elon sort of resisted that? See, the thing with conspiracy theories is if only 1 out of 10 is actually true, there's a risk in suppressing all of them.
Well, in the interview with David Faber, Elon said the piece about Hunter Biden turned out to be true.
Wuhan. The origination of the...
But that doesn't mean that they faked the moon landing, right?
Right.
And that doesn't mean that JFK wasn't killed in Dallas, and that doesn't mean that Jews are controlling the world.
Right.
So I think we've got to realize that just because something is true doesn't mean everything is.
Can we shift really quickly to what's happening in Montana, this ban of TikTok?
Yeah.
And the idea, is this free speech or is this a security issue, and how this is going to play out in the courts?
Look, I've been on your show before talking about social media. I think it can be incredibly dangerous, but I don't agree with banning books, and I don't agree with closing off companies. I think a better approach would be, number one, we need a policy environment in which all social media is regulated. That doesn't happen today because of 230.
Well, they're worried about information being sent back to China because it's a Chinese company, which means that
I think there are ways that could be handled with smart and strategic regulation. The bigger issue for me is how kids are using this, and to put some regulations on that, like we regulate cigarettes and alcohol, I think would make a lot of sense. But outright banning the company, I don't think that's the right approach. I just don't.
And is that a free speech argument, or is that a argument just about the practicality of putting something like this together?
Both. I mean, I think there are free speech implications of this, but it's also just the practicality. Like, I believe in capitalism. I think it works.
We're going to